Hello and welcome to the Wake Up Call podcast. Today we're speaking with Mr. Claudio Grass about the resistance to the European Union in Switzerland and Iceland, and the upcoming Brexit referendum and growing Euroscepticism in Germany. Mr. Grass is Managing Director of Global Gold, and you can follow his work at globalgold.com. You can find more of his work at goldandliberty.com. For more information, see the show notes page for this episode at wakeupcallpodcast.com/EU-resistance. Claudio, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Daniel and Adam, for having me.
So let's just start off with a historical overview. So could you explain to us what was the goal of the European Union when it started, and why did it start in the first place?
Oh, that's a tough one to start with. Thank you very much. I can only tell you what I know about the European Union. I think that has been an idea which already the Nazis in Germany, they wanted to have a unified Europe. So that when you look at the whole setup, it was all about consolidating power, of course. And at the same time also then using one currency for different nations with a different economical setup. That was the initial thought, I think, of that European Union. And today it becomes like the Soviet, when we see that the people in the Eurozone have nothing to decide, and only the politicians and unelected representative within the European Commissions, they are the guys telling the people what to do, what is good for them, what they're allowed to eat, what they're allowed to think. And so it's a development which has led to quite a misery, as we can see. And now the cracks in the European Union are visible. We have different secession movements within Europe. Also, we have new parties standing up against the orders in Brussels. It's interesting days, and I don't believe that the European Union is going to last for the next decade. I really have the feeling that it's breaking up.
No, there are some very exciting developments going on right now as pertains to this. But before we get into some of those, can you talk a little bit about how a country becomes a European Union member and what reasons politicians and other officials who back EU membership put forward? I'm a Swiss guy. And basically Switzerland is not part of the European Union. So we had a vote in Switzerland. I think the first one was 1992. I'm not 100% sure when the exact date took place, where the Swiss were asked in a popular vote if you want to join the European Union or not. And back then it was quite. I think 50.3% of the voters were against to join the European Union, and the rest were in favor of the European Union. So in Switzerland, the sovereign are the people at the end of the day. We are the last remaining direct democracy left on that planet. I think when it comes to the other countries, I assume, politicians, light them into the European Union. And of course, the euro was for a lot of, especially for the southern nations, extremely attractive, and that's how they sold it. When the euro was implemented, finally, the currency debased, the local currency debased, and even the Italians, they lost a lot of money. So I think it's people perception and politicians coming up with promises which they cannot keep, and that's how the European Union was formed. Maybe interesting is the way the French, they have so far profited the most from the European Union over the last few years, and these are also the guys which are dominating the commissions, and the Germans, they wanted to have the reunification, with Western Germany and Eastern Germany, and they were told, this can happen, but as long as they join the euro and the European Union. So it's a, I like history. I'm not I'm not a totalitarian guy, so that's why I haven't studied, the initial, how the whole Eurozone became members. But of course, it was always promises, telling the people, basically, there's a free lunch. That they can profit from joining the EU, and finally it turned out that it was all lies, and now that's what we can see, because it's an acceleration of centralization, and therefore as Lord Acton always said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and this is what we are witnessing when it comes to the European Union.
And there's been some historical relevant ideas to why the Swiss have rejected this centralization over the years. Can you talk a bit about why they've really resisted? They resisted joining the EU. Why did they join the UN? And a bit more about the Swiss People's Party and its connection to those issues.
Okay, maybe just to follow up, the European Union also has been sold as a peace project. I almost forgot to say that. That was really, they were telling the people, we don't want to have war again in Europe, so that's why we have to unify everything under the same roof. Okay, so let's go back to Switzerland. When you look into the history of Switzerland, we never had a king. We never had a president. Ron Paul said once, the most beautiful thing about Switzerland is that no one knows the name of the president of Switzerland. And the reason for that is that we have 7 of those guys, So we have a federal council consisting of 7 members. And, we are a confederation. And, we have, Switzerland consists of 26 different states. And we have 4 different languages. We have different religions already going back over centuries in the past. And the whole approach when it comes to Switzerland was always bottom up and never top down. And this had a strong influence on the people, in combination, of course, with a policy dominated by, or stick to the rules of neutrality. And armed neutrality, basically. So we, even in the history of Switzerland, we were always fighting foreign dukes or the Habsburgians and so on. And the Swiss just wanted to to stay alone, to stay independent, and not to pay taxes to foreign authorities and so on. And this is still part of the Swiss genes. And when we joined, the United Nations and even the International Monetary Fund, we did that, not that long ago. The International Monetary Fund, we joined them, I think it was in 1992. And at that time it was also said, gold is not, if we join the IMF, we still can keep our gold because every nation who joined the IMF basically had to sign a piece of paper saying that gold reserves are not a monetary asset, and the Swiss were signing up for the IMF by saying, okay, we can keep our gold, and of course over the years then has changed, and we were on the gold standard, for example, until the end of the 90s. We had in our constitution a gold backing of 40%. And then in 2000, the government came up with the message that we have to modernize our constitution, and that nothing is going to be changed. And they pushed, for a public vote within a very short period of time. But they didn't tell, the people what's in exactly. They were only saying, okay, modernizing the constitution. That's all. And then they took out, for example, also that gold backing.
Now, Switzerland has applied in the past to become an EU member. So what is the status of that application, and what is the current status of relations between Switzerland and EU members?
Well, Switzerland never applied officially, at least, the people of Switzerland, they never supported officially that we become a member of the European Union. That has been done, by our politicians, the Federal Council, who handed it in without informing the people, and So they also knew, I think we had 2 or twice, we had now a public vote if you want to join the European Union. And the last one has been a few years ago, and now we just had a poll. So 84% of all the Swiss, they don't want to join the European Union. So, when it comes to the people, we want to stay alone, we want to stay independent. So sovereignty is extremely important for the Swiss. They understand that only when we are a sovereign nation, we can stay free. And so this document, which was handed in by our Federal Council members at the beginning of the 90s, that has now been officially withdrawn. I think just recently, about 1 month ago. So that's off the table. But at the end of the day, also we in Switzerland, the people are completely against the EU. We want to have our own laws. But, our politicians and the bureaucrats, of course, they're all happy. They also want to join. And so they're trying to ignore, and they're trying to adapt or take over laws, and they're also scaring, the Swiss people. At the moment, for example, they're saying, if you want to have these bilateral agreements and we want to have free trade, then we have to be part of that European Union. And that has been raised now in combination with the immigration poll we had 1.5 years ago, where the Swiss basically decided, listen, immigration is still up to the Swiss, and we decide ourselves who is allowed to come in or not, but we are not going to delegate that to the European Union. And so the Europeans, of course, Brussels is threatening now that this would have an impact on the bilateral agreements and so on. But and that's also the message our politicians are trying to convey, but it has nothing to do with the bilateral agreements, because we have a free trade agreement with the European Union, which goes back to, I think, 1972. So it's always the people perception, of course, and then you have the mass medias and you have the establishment, which likes centralized power. But I'm sure, that's what we have seen in the last elections. The Swiss realize what's going on. And we also had, from end of the 90s, for the first few years, a trend towards more centralization. But this trend has now been broken, at least for the last 4 or 5 years. And the party, it's called SVP, which is now the strongest party in Switzerland, which is called, a right-wing party. But basically their key message was, stay free, stay independent. So they became the strongest party over the last few years. And this just shows, the resistance of the Swiss against centralized government has been broken. And therefore I'm positive that we move again more towards, decentralization. And we can also see that with initiatives are handed in. So we're trying to get away with, the government-owned TV channels, because every Swiss has to pay fixed fee. He's forced to pay a fixed fee, even if he's not watching, the TV stations. And now we gathered 100,000 signatories, and this is going to be a public poll next year, where the Swiss can decide if they want to sponsor or finance that government sponsored media channels or not. So if we're going to win that one, then basically, the propaganda engine in Switzerland is also coming down, which is another good sign in terms of freedom and independency.
And I'm glad you brought up the trade deficit and trade surplus issue, because that's also one of the huge reasons that swings support back and forth between people who really want to be part of this Eurocentric model and people who don't. Because a lot of people, they say, oh, well, we want this free trade, and sometimes the free trade agreements aren't really free, and they're like more like tariff setting agreements, and other times it's better off for exporters to not be a part of the European Union. So a lot of the kind of tariff setting and the free trade within the Eurocentric model has a lot to do, I think, with the decision of kind of everyday people on whether or not to vote for these referendums. And you also talked a little bit about immigration. Can you talk a little bit more about the current immigration crisis and how that's really pushing more Euroscepticism, especially in Germany?
Yeah, I mean, when we see how the politicians are acting within the Eurozone, especially, of course, the German Chancellor Merkel, who came out, with statements last year that everyone is welcome who wants to migrate into Germany, and that they were even paying a head fee, that when they are coming, that they receive this 2,000 euros or whatever. It's completely insane. And so what when we look at this mass immigration, I mean, it's not that we are overrun by hordes, also not in Europe, but even when you have 1 million or 2-3 millions, I think last year the total Eurozone maybe had 3 million refugees and 1.45 in Germany. It has a strong impact on the cultural identity of the Germans and the French, and so I can't, for me, this is basically the politicians are promoting cultural suicide. And that leads to the, you don't understand what's going on. I mean, we have a real economy which is basically going down. At the same time, you're opening up the borders for refugees coming from a completely different area with a different mindset, with a different religious beliefs as well, with a different attitude also towards women. Because, most of these refugees, they have been sold as Syrian refugees. But when we look at the migration streams, we can see that maybe 7 to 9% are, from Syria. And the rest of the people are coming from Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, and also, Africa. I mean, I have seen, pictures in the news, a boat filled up with Africans sold as Syrian refugees. So why are the politicians promoting such an agenda? And that basically brings us, to cultural Marxism. And when you look into that topic, there has been, back in 1930, there has been a so-called intellectual think tank has been founded under the name of the Frankfurt School by guys like Horkheimer, Adorno, Fromm, and they were all, Marxists. So when they realized that, Marxism is not working, the oppressed class and the oppressors, they thought in the past, okay, the employers, that's the enemy, and the employees, they will stand up against, the oppressors, which are the entrepreneurs and so on. So they realized that this is not going to work. They said, okay, so we have to destroy Western civilization. We have to destroy the belief system. Then we have to destroy the family, because the family, as per the Frankfurt School, used to be the center of fascistic cell, basically. And they also invented, through Herbert Marcuse, that they were saying we also have to control the language, and that has been the beginning of political correctness. And so when that school was founded in 1930, the outcome was the 68er generation, the 1968er. And now we can look into especially Germany. So when we see Merkel and Joschka Fischer, who used to be the defense minister of Germany in the past, even Schröder and von der Leyen, the guys who are now in charge, they are all cultural Marxists. Because the battle cry for the cultural Marxists and the Frankfurters used to be, we had the long march through the institutions. And these guys are now in charge. And Google it up, make yourself your own picture. Google the Frankfurt School. Google a bit, cultural Marxism, and you will be surprised to see that it's all in line, And then you might also understand a bit better what's going on right now and why do they try, to open. I mean, I'm a libertarian, don't get me wrong. I believe in freedom of movement. But as long as we are capped in a social welfare state, first of all, it's racistic by definition. And secondly, I lived 2 years in the Middle East, and I was talking, I lived in Israel and also in Syria. And especially when I spoke to the people in Syria, I mean, they knew Europe from the TV station. So they told me, hey, Claudio, if we could make it into the Eurozone, into Europe, then we would also get the car and we would have a house. And so for them, it was really the promised land. And now, of course, when they received the official invitation that the borders are open and they can migrate freely,
they thought, yeah, this is, let's move to the promised land, and now they are stuck somewhere in refugee camps, and most of them are not qualified, that we could use them also in the economical structure we have. So when they realize, that their dreams are going to be destroyed or not fulfilled, I think they will be quite, it will be a quite ugly development. And at the same time, we have been conditioned, especially since the end, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the new enemy to us has been sold as the Arab and the Muslim, and now we bombed that region back to the Stone Ages, basically, the Western world, and now at the same time, politicians are saying, yeah, let them in, we have to welcome them. It's just a really, really crazy story, and so I think, we have to end wars. And we have to leave that region alone. I love cultural diversity, but I don't like basically a mixed up, which is which is making the people completely equal, and is not respecting different cultures and different traditions. And this is the beauty of our planet, that we have different regions, different cultures, and we should also leave it like this. So we should end, foreign intervention, and watch out for our own business, and that's it.
Well, in this destruction of Western civilization that we're seeing going on, while it's happening, all over the Western world, Germany really seems to be the center of it in many ways, particularly as relates to the mass migration that we're seeing and the fallout from that. So, what is happening in Germany amongst those who have been living in Germany for a long time and are culturally German and ethnically German? What are we seeing to push back against this? I guess we've seen the rise of the Alternative for Germany party and some other opposition parties, and an increase in Euroscepticism. But what's happening to push back against this in Germany? And where do you see this headed? Do you think we might see Germany leave the EU at some point as a result of these immigration policies really upsetting and infuriating so many people there? Where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I think this AfD, which is the new party in Germany, which started, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, and now they had a change when it comes to they started as a Eurosceptical party, but the old leaders of that party, they were trying to find a middle way somehow, and now the hats have been exchanged. And the young girl, Frauke Petri, took over. And so she's really, she is against the European Union. She believes, in family values. She believes also, she wants to protect the cultural identity of that country, because, we have seen, when you have people coming from war zones, and at the same time, from regions where, the Taliban, for example, or the Salafists or the Wahhabis, from Saudi Arabia had a strong influence, dominating, that particular regions. It's basically, these, the Arab, the Salafists, the Muslim Brothers, everything, organized religion, they want to return to a kind of Islam which is based in the 6th century. And so, of course, even the status of a woman is completely different than in our Western civilization. And that's why we had also clashes in the past, when the young girls in Europe were running around, with a little bit more sexier than basically, the guys coming from those kind of regions, they cannot handle that. For them, it's really, they look at the girls then as that they can hunt it down. And that's the incidents we had. And so AfD is also seeing that, and at the same time, more and more people are just afraid. They are just afraid what's going on, and now, of course, AfD has been declared as a so-called right-wing party
because also in Germany, I mean, you know, most of the people, they don't think any longer. And you have a thought control, which is political correctness at the end of the day. So people are only used to take over positions. You know, I'm pro-refugee and I'm against refugee, but they don't debate. And when you are not allowed to debate freely, because you are going to be put into a corner of, you know, right-wing or Nazi, I mean, this is just absolutely absurd. And without having a debate, people can also not free themselves from their self-imposed knowledge. And I mean, that's exactly where we are. People, you know, cannot think any longer. And you can even go, you know, you can look at our public education system, which is also based, you know, on the doctrines of a guy, Wilhelm Wundt, and John Dewey took it over, and Thorndike, they brought it into the United States. And their doctrine has always been, when a child is born, it's just a piece of meat. It has no free will. It has no self-determination. So you have to make sure that you can stimulate to get, and make sure that you get the right reactions. But, you know, we are conditioning our children's from when they are 6, 7 years old, and we try to make all of them, you know, equal. And I don't believe that we are all equal. We should be equal in front of the law, but you know, we are all different and we have all different talents. And I think that's what we have to promote again. And that's why we need to have different educational system instead of you know, a dumping down system, which has as one of the single goals is really to make children not think. They just have to learn by heart and repeat, and that's it. And this is now where we are, and but I, you know, look at the internet. You know, the internet is really the Gutenberg press, and I think the internet is the game changer. I'm negative when it comes, you know, to the Eurozone and the Western world in general, in the short run, but I'm positive in the mid and long run, and so that's why, you know, I believe it's so important that guys like you or also we, you know, we have, you know. When a human being is born, I think he is a libertarian by heart, and he's just, you know, losing it because of all the foreign influences. And so we just have to make sure, let's spread, you know, the better ideas, and let's get the people back into debate, so that we can, you know, start, you know, with the Enlightenment, which basically should have taken place 250 years ago. But it hasn't, and so now we are back in that environment.
Okay, a few more questions, and then we'll start to wrap up here. What do you think about, and this might be a bit of a loaded question, but what do you think about Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and the start of this kind of global movement against the establishment? Now, I know you could make a pretty big argument that Trump and Sanders are part of the establishment, but there is kind of this growing movement against the establishment political parties. What do you think about that?
You know, I think at the end of the day, I believe it's great, you know, that we have guys standing up against the establishment. I mean, that's, you know, UKIP in the UK, and even, you know, Front National and Jean-Marie Le Pen, or Marine Le Pen in France. You know, we need more decentralization. And we don't, you know, more decentralization means more freedom and liberty, and more centralization means more totalitarianism. So at the end of the day, I'm always in favor of decentralization, even if they, you know, sometimes have a kind of national socialistic, setup. I don't like that at all, of course. But, you know, when we look at what the establishment is doing, I mean, we are going, you know, towards World War III. And so if Hillary Clinton, you know, is going to be elected, or one of these establishment guys, I think, you know, the trend is clear, and they will just follow that trend. And with Trump, I mean, Trump is, he gave all the frustrated guys or all the people without the voice. That's the guys who are standing now behind Trump. And also, I'm a European, so maybe it's a bit selfish, but I believe, you know, if Trump would be elected, I think then when it comes to foreign policy, you know, maybe he would. He already said that he is going to take down, you know, the NATO and less foreign intervention. That he wants to close deals with Putin and so on. So I believe, you know, we should it's always good to have more peace, especially in our region, because that will also help the migration crisis. But on the other side, of course, the threat with Trump is that he's going to divide the United States, and that hatred and so on is going to be spread. So that might lead to racism, clashes. I think that's a potential outcome, but at least there is some movement, and we are not still stuck in the same trend. So, I mean, Bernie Sanders, I mean, it's amazing that you can be a communist and run for presidency. I mean, what can I say? Because America used to be the land of the free, and now it just shows how far you have gone in a way. And yeah, so I we have to shake it up. I mean, at the end of the day, don't expect anything good from the top. The central banks will not change their policy. Politicians are not going to change anything. We have to change the mindset of the people. We have to make them start thinking again and coming up with their own thoughts. And we should show them that we can respect and tolerate different opinions, so that we can agree, basically, that we don't agree, but we have to bring the people in that direction, and that then we are much better off than we are today.
And one area where we may see some decentralization just in about 2 months from now is with this Brexit referendum. And we've seen some very high-profile individuals come out and support the UK leaving the EU. We've seen George Galloway and Nigel Farage, and even Boris Johnson, the Mayor of London, has come out in favor of the UK leaving the EU. So what do you make of this Brexit referendum, and what's your take on the chances of it passing? I'm assuming there will be a major campaign against it of billions and trillions of U.S. dollars being spent against that. But can it pass? Do you think it will pass?
Yeah, I have to ask my crystal ball. No, I don't know. I don't know. At the end of the day, today, yeah, we will see. I believe the good stuff is that we see a resistance movement. If the UK would leave, I mean, it would be fantastic, of course. But I have the feeling anyway. You see all these cracks in the European Union, so it's a matter of time until it will break away. And if they will, when the Brits are going to manage, a propaganda campaign, whenever the establishment feels a bit threatened, I mean, they dominate all the mass medias and those channels. So, will be interesting. But I think it just shows, more and more people are waking up. They are not happy with what's going on. They don't see that they have a clear perspective in the future. And so yeah, it's growing. It's growing. If the UK stays, then it might take a bit longer. But if not, I think there also the trend is clear, and that is basically the breakup of the Eurozone.
There's also been some resistance to the EU in Iceland. Could you give us a bit more information about that, and how is that playing into this whole equation?
I think Iceland basically consists of Reykjavik. If the mayor of Reykjavik, then you also control in a way, Iceland. And I just was looking at, when the new mayor, there has been a punk, guy, he's in punk music, and he came up, doing fun, and he wanted to become, the mayor of Reykjavik, and he finally managed, So I love the Iceland people, and also right now, it's a small country. It has you have never been to Iceland, but they have their own, culture and so on. But it just shows, that the Icelandic people, they have been hit hard, and they basically refused that, that the bank, all the banking debt needs to be paid, by the individual taxpayer, and so they made a lot of people quite unhappy. And but I think there also the uprising is also there, and they would never ever, join the European Union. So it's good.
And one thing I think is a bit unfortunate, sometimes we notice this trend that things have to go horribly wrong before we adopt the kind of libertarian standpoint on things, right? It's never... People are always convinced by the politicians and by the leaders, why don't we set things up this way for a centralized model because everything will be so much better. And it's only when things go horribly wrong and we see all the horrible flaws in the system that we start moving back towards decentralization. So I think it'd be nice maybe in the future if we say, well, why don't we instead continue to push towards decentralization so we don't have these problems instead of, centralize until a problem occurs and then we decentralize a bit more and then centralize again and decentralize again, It'd be easier if we just decentralized from the start.
No, that's definitely true. And on that note, I want to thank you very much for joining us today and ask you where our listeners can follow your work and what you recommend they read if they're interested in learning more about the sorts of things we've been talking about today.
What we are doing, we are publishing on a quarterly basis an Outlook report. Within the Outlook report, we talk about monetary history. Of course, we talk about gold. At the end of the day, we are a physical gold company offering services in that business. But we also, we are promoting, Austrian economics. We are promoting the principles of liberty. So we are trying to educate. And also to spread the better ideas. We do, book summaries. Right now we're working on a big oil report covering the last 150 years. So they can, everything is free available. They can go to globalgold.ch or .com and they can subscribe for our updates. And we also have this goldenliberty.com blog, which is pretty new. But this is also, being used, to promote, all those different kind of ideas, working together with great people on a global scale, through libertarians, through Austrians, sometimes also classic liberals. I embrace everyone that is moving in the right direction. I think Jeff Dice brought it up once, the freedom train metaphor, jump on the freedom train as long as it goes in the right direction, and you can jump, you can leave the train whenever you want to, but so you find our stuff there, and you will also find, go on Mises.org. The best books, best sources, everything is for free. It's definitely on the Mises, and I think that's a good start, at least.
Well, that definitely sounds like a good start to me. And I want to remind everybody that the show notes page for this episode is at wakeupcallpodcast.com/EU-resistance. And we will link to everything that was just discussed, and we'll have resources related to this episode there. So again, that's wakeupcallpodcast.com/EU-resistance. And on that note, I want to thank you once again for joining us today, and we'd love to talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you very much. It has been, a real pleasure talking to you guys, and thank you what you're doing. I wish you a lot of success, and that you will become a real successful blog and show. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Wake Up Call podcast.
If you would like to listen to more episodes, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes, or subscribe on Stitcher, and check out our website at wakeupcallpodcast.com.
There you will find show notes pages and comment sections dedicated to the show. You can also email us at contact@wakeupcallpodcast.com if you're interested in being interviewed for the show or have any other suggestions.
Thank you.